The first snowfall of winter always felt magical to John, a retired park ranger living on the edge of a vast, untamed wilderness. He loved the quiet hush it brought to the forest, the way it blanketed everything in a clean white sheet. But one crisp morning, as he sipped his coffee and gazed out his window, he noticed something peculiar. A set of tracks unlike any he'd ever seen in his decades of experience marred the pristine snow. They were large, almost human-like, but far too big and strangely shaped. Curiosity, a trait that had never left him even in retirement, gnawed at him. Pulling on his warmest gear, he stepped outside, the cold air biting his cheeks. He had to know what had made those tracks. The trail led him deeper into the woods than he usually ventured in winter. The footprints were deliberate, heavy, telling a story of a creature walking with purpose, but also with a strange, dragging gait in one foot. John's mind raced through all the possibilities. A bear walking on its hind legs. Unlikely for this long, a prank by some local kids. The depth and consistency of the tracks ruled that out. Every step he took heightened the mystery, and a sense of unease began to creep in. The forest was eerily silent, the only sound the crunch of his own boots in the snow. He felt a primal sense of being watched, the kind of feeling that raises the hairs on the back of your neck. Still, he pressed on, driven by an instinct he couldn't explain. The tracks were getting fresher, the story they told more urgent. After nearly an hour of trekking, the footprints led him to a small, secluded clearing, dominated by a cluster of massive, snow-laden fir trees. And there, huddled at the base of the largest tree, was the source of the tracks. It wasn't an animal he recognized. It was a small, shivering creature covered in thick, matted white fur that was caked with ice and snow. It looked like a tiny ape, but its face was hauntingly human, with large, dark eyes wide with fear and confusion. It was whimpering softly, a sound so full of sorrow it pierced John's heart. One of its small, oversized feet was caught in a cruel, rusted bear trap, the very thing he had fought to have outlawed in these woods for years. This wasn't just a strange animal. It was a baby, injured and alone. For a moment, John was frozen, not by the cold, but by awe and disbelief. The legends, the campfire stories, the blurry photos, could they all be true? Was he looking at a baby Bigfoot? The creature, seeing him, tried to scramble back, but cried out in pain as the trap bit deeper into its ankle. All thoughts of myths and legends vanished from John's mind, replaced by a single, overwhelming instinct to help. He slowly knelt down, keeping his movements gentle and non-threatening. "It's okay," he murmured, his voice soft. "I'm not going to hurt you. I'm here to help." He could see the terror in its eyes, but also a glimmer of understanding. It was intelligent. It knew he was speaking to it. Cautiously, he reached into his pack for his tools, his mind racing. Freeing it was one thing, but what would he do then? Leaving it here, injured and alone, was a death sentence. Working with painstaking slowness, John began to work on the trap. The mechanism was old and rusted, making it incredibly difficult to release. The little creature watched his every move, its whimpers subsiding into ragged, fearful breaths. He kept talking to it, his voice a steady, calming drone. "Almost there, little one. Just hold on." As he worked, he noticed the details. Its surprisingly delicate hands, the way its fur was as soft as down beneath the icy crust, the intelligence that shone from its soulful eyes. It seemed to understand his intent. Finally, with a loud groan of protesting metal, the jaws of the trap sprang open. The baby creature pulled its foot free with a pained cry, the ankle swollen and bleeding. Without a second thought, John gently scooped the shivering being into his arms. It was surprisingly light. It flinched, but didn't fight him, instead burying its cold face into the warmth of his jacket. The decision was made. He was taking it home. Back in the warmth of his cabin, John carefully cleaned and bandaged the wound. The little creature, which he had started calling Frosty, was weak but seemed to relax in the safety of the small home. It watched him with an unnerving intensity, as if trying to understand this strange, kind being who had saved it. John made a small bed of blankets by the fireplace and offered it some warm milk and mashed berries, which it devoured gratefully. Over the next few days, a strange and wonderful routine developed. Frosty would follow John around the cabin like a furry shadow, its initial fear slowly replaced by a deep-seated trust. It was incredibly intelligent, learning simple gestures and commands with astonishing speed. It loved to sit by the fire, mesmerized by the dancing flames, and would sometimes let out soft, melodic hums that sounded like an ancient, forgotten song. John knew he couldn't keep this secret forever. Frosty was growing stronger, and its wound was healing nicely. But revealing its existence to the world would turn it into a spectacle, a scientific curiosity to be poked and prodded. He couldn't bear the thought of it living in a cage. He also knew its family must be searching for it. One evening, as a blizzard raged outside, John was sitting with Frosty by the fire. The little creature looked up at him, its big eyes seeming to hold the wisdom of the ancient forest. It then reached out a small hand and placed it on John's chest, right over his heart, and looked towards the window, towards the deep woods. The message was clear. It wanted to go home. John felt a pang of sadness, but he knew it was the right thing to do. He had saved it, and now he had to let it go. The next morning, the snow had stopped. John bundled Frosty up one last time and carried it back to the clearing where he had found it. As they stood there, a low, resonant call echoed through the trees. It was a sound both powerful and mournful. Frosty answered with its own high-pitched cry. A moment later, two massive figures emerged from the dense woods. They were huge, at least 8 or 9 feet tall, covered in the same thick white fur. The parents, they stopped at the edge of the clearing, their expressions unreadable, but their presence overwhelming. John's heart pounded in his chest, but he stood his ground, holding the baby. He slowly knelt and gently set Frosty down on the snow. The little one hesitated for a second, looked back at John, then scampered towards its parents. The female Bigfoot gently scooped up her baby, nuzzling it and checking its bandaged foot with a surprising tenderness. Then the giant male stepped forward. It stood before John, a towering, majestic figure. It didn't make a threatening move. Instead, it raised a massive hand, not in aggression, but in a gesture that seemed almost like a salute. It then placed its hand on its own chest, mimicking the gesture Frosty had made the night before. It was a sign of gratitude, a profound acknowledgement from one intelligent being to another. A silent thank you that transcended language and species. Then, as silently as they had appeared, the family of three turned and vanished back into the impenetrable depths of the forest, leaving John alone in the clearing. John walked back to his cabin, his heart full. He was no longer just a retired park ranger. He was the keeper of a magnificent secret. The world could continue to debate the existence of Bigfoot, but John knew the truth. He had looked into their eyes and seen not a monster, but a family, a soul, a deep connection to the wild places of the world. He would carry that moment with him for the rest of his days, a reminder that the world is full of wonders far beyond our understanding, waiting to be discovered not with traps and cameras, but with an open heart and a little bit of kindness. The strange footprints in the snow hadn't just led him to a mystery. They had led him to a moment of pure, unadulterated magic. Thank you so much for joining me on this incredible story. If you were as moved as I was, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more amazing tales. Let me know in the comments what you would have done in John's position. Until next time, stay curious.